Welcome in the spread. This is Todd Ashton. We're going to go over some tips and techniques on how to catch striped bass like this beautiful fish. There you go. I've got 1 ounce of weight on right now with this much flow. Probably have to go to 2 to get it down there where you need to be. Right on the bottom, you know. The quicker you can get it on the bottom, the better your chances are hooking up there. Like right now, I'm just tinging, just barely popping it across the bottom right here. Typically this far, but with this much flow, you can, like that right there, you can catch them this far back. Now, if they got slower flow, then you won't make this far of a drift. You'll just go maybe to the end of that wall before you come back, go back up. But with the heavier flow, it keeps them active further down. It's been a while since I caught a fish. I don't know how to act. Popped him off. Quick release. But that's typically how you do it. Yeah, your fish will set right in the first 30 yards of the rough water. You know, the bait gets churned up, gets spit out, so they'll just set in behind the rocks, pick it up as it comes across their face. So you'll take 1 to 2 ounces depending on the flow, throw it in there behind the bulls, and as you're drifting out, you know, that bait just comes right across the fish's face and you're hooked up. As you can see, cast out, drift in the rough water. Everybody kind of gets in a line on the calm side, comes back up. Kind of take turns, you know. If you try to run up the center, then you're gonna be hitting people that's drifting down, so. Little method to the madness, I guess you could say. Yeah. Just pool salt. Keeps the bait happy. Without that, they'll be red-nosed in like an hour.
Ideally, how far up into the whitewater do you want to get that bait?
You can't really see from here, but you'll have like a couple seams where the gates come together. And if you can hit that seam, your bait will get down quicker. If you hit to the left or the right where the water's coming straight out, it'll just wash your bait under your boat. So as long as you get close enough to hit the seam to get your bait down, you're good. I mean, you can see every drift you make, you know, you'll hook up. So there's thousands of fish in here. When they're not generating and it's calm, just dead still water, it's only about 12, 14 foot deep here. You can see huge schools of stripers just swimming around. Whitewater rafting and fishing at the same. Yeah, it just kind of freaks people out. And if you got a smaller boat, it's a little sketchy, you know, like not everybody has big high-sided 24-foot boats. Dude, Corey's boat's a yacht compared to what I've seen up here. Like I've seen people up here, a little 3.5 lawnmower motor. I'm like, they're gonna die. I took some guys fishing up here probably 6 years ago. They brought their boat and did it themselves the next day. Man, they were just reckless. I was like, those dudes are going to get killed. 2 weeks later, they were below Kentucky Lake Dam. 2 of them did get killed. Got too close, sucked them into they were spilling. Spilling's the most dangerous because it'll suck you in, and once your boat gets over there, boom, you're gone. You know, your boat's at the bottom in a split second. And then it creates that hydraulic, just holds you down. They were fully clothed, life jackets. They found them stripped naked, dead downstream. Yeah, so you don't get too close. This isn't very dangerous here, the way they're spilling all 3, because there's no back suction. Like sometimes if they're just doing this far left gate, all this water will get sucked back in there. So if you're like where we were changing water and you're not looking, it'll suck you right back in there, you know, so it's pretty sketchy. You can just pop the bell, feed line. It's a lot easier to feed the line and stuff opposed to, you know, but most people can't use them, so most of my clients get on the boat and be like, what are we catching today? You see the seam there in the middle where the water's coming together, like that choppy, rough water? That's where you want to get your bait. It's hard to see with this many spilling. But the quicker you get it to the bottom, the quicker you'll get bit. If you're not feeling the bottom, let out some line until you start. you know, just barely skipping across the bottom. It kind of spit me out quick there. I still haven't felt it. Now I'm down there. Just kind of adjust to the flow depending on how much weight you put on. I mean, I'll put 40-pound leaders on there and still get bit, which is better up here because of all the rocks and everything you skip across. These smaller leaders, you'll end up breaking fish off, you know, just from scarring up your line. Normally fishing down lines, I'll use a 5-foot leader or so up here. I don't know, it doesn't matter if it's 6 inches, they'll eat it. And it's easier casting, you know. You don't have that much stuff whipping around when you're throwing it up in there in the rough water. Especially up here, they'll get on little tiny bait. And you'll have to go to like little 2-3 inch thread fins to get bit. Even on like 20-25 pound fish, it's crazy. It's kind of a match the hatch type deal. A lot of times you'll see the bait running the wall up there. But typically a number two octopus. You can do circles up here as well. Most people like setting the hook, so. The most important thing, get your bait hooked up, get it in the tank so you're ready. You know, you don't want to run up in the rapids trying to hook a bait. By the time you get a bait on and cast, you're out of there. In the mouth, out one nose hole. Waiting on you, brother. Come on. I love it. He's in the sea nymph. soon as I hit the bottom, I mean, you're about instant. That heavier weight helped out. What's up? A little nicer fish there. Up here, small gizzards will work just as good as just about anything when there's this many fish in here. You know, 3-inch gizzard shad. Thread fins work great. I just hook them in the nostril. As long as they're kicking, you don't have to have like super great bait up here. So it kind of makes it easy for everybody to catch fish. When I first drop it in, I'll just kind of feel. If I'm not getting the bottom, let some line out, especially in the more turbulent water. Then I'm starting to bump the bottom there. It just feels like something just ticking your line, just barely popping it. Kind of lost the bottom there, so let a little line out. Lost it again. And if you don't feel it, like we're doing a pretty quick drift now, just keep letting it go until you start feeling it. There it is. It just feels like just little pecks like that, and then just kind of reel up. Keep bumping, bumping. Then when the fish hits, it's just it's just very different. It's not a little short peck, you know, it's just bam, it's on. If you go down through here pecking the bottom, trying to set the hook on all these rocks, you'll just end up ripping your bait off before you get to the fish. You don't have to really set the hook here, so you don't, don't be scared of missing a fish. Because when they hit, it's just on. And as you're drifting this, you want to try different things. You know, if you go up one run and hit right down the center, come all the way down, you're on the bottom, you don't hook up. Next run, fish the left side of that spill gate. With 3 gates going, you got about 4 seams coming down through there that you'll want to fish where the water meets, and they'll be laying in one of them. And it's pretty instant, so if you don't hook up, you're just in the wrong place or not close enough to the bottom. Or you didn't let enough line out when you get it. when you first get up there, if you can get it to the bottom, you're going to hook up almost every time. So do something different, add weight. Felt like a little hit there. I said that's the biggest mistake you'll make up here, is just continuously jerking and trying to set the hook on these rocks. You know, it's just a, I mean, it feels like a little fish hitting, but it's, you know, it's not. The fish, when they hit, they take it and scream upstream. You know, it's just real heavy. So the more you jerk and rip and go crazy with it, you're just gonna lose your bait and miss fish. Be a little rougher floating back this time. Last drift I made, I fished the center of it, so this drift I'm going to fish towards the wall, see if they moved over there. Kind of same concept, just keep letting line out till you feel the bottom. And always keep your rod tip high. That way if you feel it, you know, you just kind of pop it off the rocks or hook a fish. Oh, missed him. Probably got our bait right there. Yeah, got our bait. But yeah, keep the rod tip high. Keeps it off the bottom. If you drop your rod tip, you're just gonna hang up, break your stuff off the whole day. That's another thing. You always want to, as soon as you get your boat stopped, you don't want to cast right that second. Let your boat, the current will catch you, and then let it start pulling you back and cast above you. If not, your bait will wash out behind you. You always want to be pulling your bait down above the boat, opposed to the bait being 30 feet behind you. It's just not as, you know, it's just not a good presentation that way. This way you're bringing the bait head first downstream, so those fish are coming up, you know, eating it. The other way, your fish, you're dragging it back up, you know, so it just doesn't look right. Basically, you're just going to throw it up in the rough water, let out line until you feel the bottom, and drag it backwards. And not fall in. The way I'm going to position the boat, cast yours straight off the bow in the seam there, and I'm going to hit the wall with this one. Yeah, just hang on. I'll tell you when to cast, because I got to let the boat catch and start drifting backwards.
Die in my boat.
All right, should be good. Just find the bottom and drift back.
I know there's that wall there. You want me to throw straight in?
Yeah, you're good. You need to let line out, do whatever till you start popping the bottom. Feeling it? Bottom. Bottom.
You got that, keep moving.
They were catching them up close, but seems like a few fish have moved on back here. Oh God, I'm gonna fall in. Oh God.
That's pretty good up there. You gotta get some big bass and walleye up here too with these little shad.
Oh, we get some monster walleye up here.
There, he's got one. Oh, that fish. I have to ask, what's the preference with mono over braid or fluoro or anything?
I like mono just because the braid, you know, if you get using heavier braid up here, you get hung up a lot. It's hard on your equipment and just dangerous when you have
No, it's true.
people that don't know what's going on. This is awesome.
Don't try this. Fire away?
Fire away.
Got one?
Yep. Don't feel like a striper. It's gonna be a drum or a catfish. Drum or a cat. Or a very small striper. Oh, little guy. No, he's a little, I don't think he knew he was hooked. Come on, dude, chill out. Ah. He's hooked good. Ah, there you go. Oh. Definitely always want to get your boat drifting back before you cast out. If not, you're going to wash your bait out. One of the beautiful things about these reservoirs like this, current all day, the fish will bite mostly all day. So you come out here 10, 11 o'clock, noon. We'll catch them 2 or 3 o'clock during the day. So if you don't like getting up early, this is the place for you.
No way.
No way. These fish will run along the walls. They'll just do big circles in this, you know, go along the wall, back out in the rough water, kind of following the bait around. So if you're not doing any good out there, you can come here, pitch a few baits out, and if they're in here, you'll get them.
Or will they go back into the rock?
They'll go all the way. Usually if there's fish there, they'll shoot out of there really quick.
Yeah, you can see them. Catch the chowing?
Yep. We just need bigger bait. Huh? No, you're good.
A decent one.
Yeah.
So let's do the welcome to in the spread
All right.
with this fish.
There we go. There you go.
Hey guys, I'm Corey Allen. I'm here with the best striper guy I've ever personally met, to be honest. No bull. This is Todd Asher.
How's it
Shad
going?
Nasty Charters. How you doing, man?
Doing great, doing great.
And what we do out here today? We came up on the Clinch River, right? And we're doing some striper fishing.
Nice.
You've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, I've been fishing this river for about 20 years.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't probably talk too well. But yeah, no, like this is something you're like really familiar with and you spend a lot of time on this. So like what brings you to an area like this? Like what, because you got a lot of rivers around here. You got a lot of different waters, reservoirs, stuff. Like what about an environment like this brings you to fishing it time and time again for different seasons, for different reasons?
This particular one, it's a cold water refuge. You know, so summertime, the stripers are going to be in here in large numbers.
Yeah.
Concentrated behind the dam. So, you know, that's what brings us here every summer. You know, just a lot of fish, a lot of action. So good times down here.
Yeah. No, and that's what we did a lot of. We spent a lot of time up at the dam there fishing. Been doing a lot of the sluicing, which is they do periodically from time to time. They've been doing a lot this summer, haven't they? It's been a little bit different because normally it's the generators, but now
Yeah, normally it's the generators. This year they've been broke all year working on them. So they've spilled all summer, which kept a consistent bite. You know, when they're generating, they'll turn them on and off every night. So with the sluicing, it's kept the bite really, really consistent all summer.
So that's been a positive thing. Even I've noticed that. So when you come to these situations like this, even though you said it stayed pretty consistent, like when you want to attack this, and as we did earlier, like what tactics do you think you like first bring to the table? Like if you're first coming to a situation like this, you come up to a dam, you come up to a boil. Yeah. Like, where do you think people should start, like, first and foremost?
The first thing you want to do, you know, that we do every time we come up here, we'll use weighted lines, get the bait down deep, you know, because a lot of times with the current, the fish are sitting on the bottom.
Yeah.
Most of the time, not all the time. So we'll put on 1 ounce or 2 ounce, depending on the amount of flow, you know, drive up in it, drift back, you know, bounce on the bottom, trying to find out where the fish are.
Yeah.
Kind of that, you know, that'll be the first thing you do as far as, you know, checking out the area. So
you want to focus on the bottom first in these current-driven areas.
Right.
And you were talking about like different types of bait and stuff. We were catching different types of bait today. If people are just starting out, they're just wanting to get like into this. What do you think is like a good bait to start with? Like when they're just like, I know there's different.
Yeah, if you're just coming into this for the first time, you really can't go wrong with 3 to 5 inch gizzard shad, 3 to 4 inch thread fin, same deal. You know, they're small enough that you can get them down deep really quick. You know, if you use too big of a bait, you're going to have to use a huge weight to get it down there.
Yeah.
So you want to use a smaller bait, get it down in the fish's face, and get them to eat it.
Cool. Well, I got to ask, man, I mean, you know, these fish aren't even supposed to be here. Like, they're stocked. It's a totally artificial fishery that's now, like, one of the crown jewels of the southeast fisheries as far as recreational goes. Like, how did you get into this? Like, what brought you to this? So many bass anglers, catfish anglers.
Absolutely. I grew up bass fishing, you know, small streams, ponds, lakes, different things. And I guess about 12 or 13 years old, I caught my first striper, and I was hooked, you know, coming from freshwater, catching 2-3 pound, you know, bass. Then you hook into a 15, 20 pound striper. I was done. So
yeah. No, it's cool. I know that there's one of these interesting fish too, because I mean, there's like numbers fisheries, trophy fisheries. Like you're more of a trophy angler, correct? Like you're fishing waters that produce some of the biggest fish in history, freshwater at least. When you're going after these big fish, and I know that like you're a guide, so you have to like provide action and trophy opportunities. I'm just kind of curious, like whenever you're targeting numbers fish, is there anything you look for specifically differently as opposed to trophy fish? And then when you're looking for trophy fish, is there something you're looking for a little bit differently for that aspect, or is it really kind of the same gear and it's kind of a grab bag?
No, you know, within the numbers, you're going to get bigger fish. Mm-hmm. You're just not specifically targeting them, you know. So you'll pick up bigger fish along the way. If you're in a school of fish catching numbers and you want to go to catching a bigger fish, we'll go with bigger bait.
Gotcha.
You know, weed out the small guys.
Yeah.
So that they can't get it. Give the big girls time to get it. They seem to be a little more lazier. It takes them longer to get up to the bait when they're fighting over it. Now, if we're truly just going after big fish, a lot of times, you know, 2-3 pound baits, you're totally different.
Talking skipjack territory.
Yeah. Different scenario.
Cool. I tell you what, one thing a lot of people are going to want to know is like, yeah, you can fish for a lot of different species out of like, you know, a lot of different boats, but to really do this right, what kind of setup do you need? Like we've talked about live bait, running up into like, you know, semi-dangerous waters. You know, you don't want to take like a small boat up there. Like what's a good general rig without being specific, without being biased, like what kind of a craft do people need?
If you're going to come out and fish the boils in any reservoir, there's quite a few in the southeast. Just a higher side, center console. That way you're comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about getting swamped, things like that. 19, 21 foot. You can do it in smaller boats. You're just taking a little more risk.
A little bit more of a risk.
Just don't get as close, which you need to be close to get into.
Yeah, and that's part of it. You have to have the right craft for the right situation. This kind of stuff, I'm not gonna lie, that was a little hairy this morning, even in a big boat like this. A
little whitewater rafting, fishing combined.
I wouldn't do that in my boat. That was some class 3s going on. So we have these fisheries like this. What do you think? You've been doing this for so many years. What's the size class potential for a place like this? I know there's been world records that have come out of here.
Absolutely.
What do you think the top end is?
The top end, you'll catch fish at this particular dam. We caught them over 40 pounds, 44, 45, something around there is kind of where we've topped out here. There have been some 50s brought out of here. So, but your typical fish here is going to be 12 to 22 pounds. That's going to be your average fish here, which for a lot of areas, that's a huge
top
fish,
end.
And here, that's just your schooling fish. So expect 12 to 22 pounds, throw in a couple 25s, one over 30. We got a nice one today. That's usually a typical day here.
Now, I know it was cool as we were fishing today, we were talking about some things. And I come from musky fishing, but the live bait thing is different. A lot of guys, I think when they come into the live bait thing, they think it's all about just once you have live bait, well, you're kind of set. It's all about just the live bait.
Yeah.
But you were talking about ways to rig them differently for different applications.
Absolutely.
And that personally intrigued me, the pitching into the bushes or the weed lines and rigging them through the top. When you're dealing with stuff like that, how often do you find that people don't really get that's not really common knowledge?
That's probably one of the biggest mistakes. You're just dragging your bait around. Everybody, 99% of everybody fishing hooks them in the nose or hooks them too deep in the head. You want the hook in there just good enough to hold them on.
Yeah.
Not too deep, whatever. But depending on the situation, you may just be dragging your bait across the surface when you need to hook it a different way to get him down in the structure where the fish are, to get them to eat it.
Well, I think, and that's just coming from my world. I think that's cool because so many guys, it just seems that, yes, catching live bait is important, using live bait's important, but you're actually that's new to me, dude. Hearing somebody say, this is how you rig a live bait to manipulate it to do what you want. You're not just
and another big mistake is people using too big of hooks. We're out here catching. That fish was probably pushing 30 pounds. We caught earlier on a 2/0 hook.
Yeah, I noticed.
That's a little tiny hook. You don't need a big hook. Match your hook to your bait. If you're using small bait, use a small hook. We'll even go down to a 1/0 hook and catch 20, 30 pound stripers, no problem.
Really?
Absolutely. And you're going to get 10 times more bite because it's not going to affect the movement of the bait if you got too large of a hook.
Because the bigger the rig, it's more intrusive to them going.
Absolutely.
And it seemed like there was so much of it is actually allowing them to do what they would do if there wasn't a hook in them at all.
Right.
This is all new to a lot of people, and this is going to be for a lot of people. Some people have done it before, some people haven't. Boats, all these things aside, what's a good basic lineup of rods and reels? When I talk musky fishing, I'll say you need this kind of rod, you need this kind of rod, you need this kind of setup to cover the different aspects that you might encounter. What are some good basic? It doesn't have to be brands, but just
right.
Yeah.
Basically here, any kind of medium heavy action rod, 20-pound test is going to be your average. And as far as reel size, this is just a 600. Hold a couple 200 or 300 yards, a 20-pound test. You knock it out on every aspect of the fishery here. Have something handy that you can cast lures with in case the fish are breaking. But as far as downline fishing, pitching the boils, you'll want to have something that you can rip them out of there with some extra line, because they will strip quite a bit of line out when you're up there in that rough water. So you come up here with a Snoopy rod and you get your feelings hurt.
No, that's true, and I see a lot of guys do that with all kinds of different fish. But I do notice too, I come from the world of pull cues and 9-foot rods, and it's you're not using stuff like that. You use a little bit lighter action, more bend, stuff like that. Right. So that's so you can actually feel.
Yeah, you want to feel it, especially when you're pitching the live bait and drifting the bulls. It is a pretty violent current up there, but you're still feeling that bottom, and you still want to be able to feel that fish when it grabs it, you know, opposed to just sitting there setting the hook on rocks all day missing fish. Another rod we'll use up here makes it a lot easier for
there you go.
When you know, if you're not real handy with a conventional reel and casting in rough water, we'll do the spinning tackle. Here's just a typical setup, rigged with 25-pound test, medium heavy action rod. You know, it just makes it a lot easier to make those long casts in that rough water, you know, opposed to with a conventional reel. Does a real nice job on the fish up here as well. And when you're pitching baits, it's got a nice tip to it.
Well, the thing, I mean, just personal note, like one of the things I do like about spinning rod and those kind of applications is the line pickup is so much easier.
Right.
Like you're trying to like adjust to the current, you're trying to adjust your drift and stuff like that. Because so much of this is like keeping up with the drift. But then the drift is like it's going to back off a little bit. The farther you get away, it's going to speed up faster.
Current slows down.
And being able to pick up like that and feel is like a really important aspect of that. You know, like everybody, I come from that school too. Like, you know, when you first start out with something, you start out enthusiastic. You know, you watch something like this, you watch a TV show, you watch somebody else do it, and they say, yeah, well, I can do that. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it always doesn't. You know, like you watch too many people get too discouraged, like too quickly into the game, and you don't want to see them give up. What's a good piece of advice you would give people, like if they just want to build up their confidence, like in the very beginning, like what's a good way for them to do that? Just tactic-wise, location-wise, like you can even say hire a guide. I mean, that's a good thing.
I mean, if you're fishing a location you don't know and you want to start learning about it, obviously the quickest way is to hire a guide. You know, hire a guide, see what kind of tactics, what kind of setup they use, what kind of bait they use. But if you're just going out, you know, on your own, you know, just read as much as you can on the internet. You know,
and that's a good point.
Keeping bait is so key here. I mean, if your bait's in bad shape, you may be within, you know, thousands of fish under you, not getting bit.
Yeah.
You're watching guys around you hook up, and it's because your bait's, you know, terrible. So I'd say first and foremost, learn the bait game wherever you're going. You know, no matter where it is you're fishing, learn the bait game, what they're using, how they're catching it, how they're keeping it. You know, the presentation they're using. I mean, going from a 2-ounce sinker to a split shot may make the difference in, you know, 5 fish that day or 25.
And that's really interesting,
depending on where they're at in the water column that day.
No, that's cool, because that's a lot of things. Like, personally, I know that, like, I mean, I talk to a lot of striper anglers. And so many guys, you know, it's like, well, they're either running or they're not. And you're one of those guys that I can just tell by talking to you, and I've always can tell this by talking to you, is like, that you don't care if they're running or not. Like, they're always swimming in the water.
Right.
Like, you're adapting your tactics to what they're doing. It's whether or not they're not hitting or they're up there like that. Like, and I've watched you do that today. Like, we've done several different tactics, several different ways.
Yeah, we use some different tactics today to get them to eat.
And that's important, because I think too many times, too many people, especially when they start out, they're looking for, like, the ABC answers of things. And you're throwing the whole alphabet at them. And that's good. Like, that's really good, because it teaches them the creativity that there is to this. And I have to admit, like, even today, like, I'm not going to say that I underestimated striper fishing. I don't. I know there's a lot to it. But there were things about it today that just being in the boat with you, like, you taught me things that I was like, oh, that's like, and I'm starting to think, oh, I can apply that to things that I do. But that's good, because that's the kind of thing that, like, especially even people just starting out need to understand. Too many people are looking for those, like, static ABC answers they can cling to. And even with something like this, is like, we're talking about live bait, but we're not just talking about live bait. Like, how do you rig it? How do you use in these different applications? You just said, like, where they situate in the water column, like, you're going to go between 2-ounce weight, you might use a split shot. It all depends. Like, don't get hung up on one thing just because it worked once or you saw it once. But this guy here has seen all the different curves, and he proved it today. He's seen all the different curves they can throw at you. And he's proven with a couple nice, well, more than a couple nice fish in the boat, that you adapt and change your sizes of live bait and how you rig them. Yeah. Like, that's how you're able to, like, bypass all the problems that nature and dams and everything else is throwing at you.
I'd say the biggest thing with striper fishing and any type of fishing, constantly changing. I mean, what the fish were doing when we pulled up here at 5:30 this morning is way different than what they're doing at 10 o'clock this morning.
Yes.
So, you know, they're very active in the morning, feeding different patterns. You know, that's time to eat. They got the feed bag on, feeding. And then the later it gets, you think, oh, man, I'm not getting any more hits. What's happening? Well, they've moved. They're still close by. They're just setting down deeper, doing something different. So you just got to change your tactics. And, don't get discouraged. Just try different stuff.
And that's what's perfect, because like so many times I talk about fishing, like people talk about pattern fishing, and you get hung up in a pattern. The thing that caught the first fish today, you'd still be doing that pattern,
Right.
whether or not it was catching fish now. And that's what's cool when you talk to a guy like this, is like, he's species specific. He talks about stripers. He can take all these tactics that you see that people get hung up on, the patterns and the little just rudimentary things about it, and he can say, well, this is how things change, this is how things adapt throughout the day, and he can tell you why. That's why people like this are so valuable to the sport. I mean, if I can just be so bold.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, serious. Why I ask you to do this? You're one of the few guys who uses your head. But that's what's cool about this, is like you can actually break down things and say, like, well, this is why we're doing this. And everything we did today, whether it was fishing up the dam or drifting below that pylon, you had very like scientifically justified reasons like why we were doing this. And if something wasn't working, like you said, you didn't just stick with it. You would change and you would adapt. And I think that's the key to fishing in general. But then we talk about these species specific topics. So I tell you what, like somebody that's wanting to get into striper fishing, just like right off the bat, like I don't know, like what is one key piece, like if you could phrase it up in a sentence, like what is something they need to bring to the table?
Open mind.
There you go.
Open mind, because anything you hear, learn, do, may work today, may work this morning, not going to work this afternoon. Just keep at it, keep learning, keep talking to people, read as much as you can. Just gather all the knowledge you can, but don't get hung up on the knowledge.
Yes, no.
Because something, you just because you read it doesn't mean it's always true, so just keep an open mind. Let the river tell you what to do that day. Let the lake tell you what to do that day.
Well, if I can be so bold, like I love what you did earlier. You did it off camera. But it was so cool when, like, you said that, well, I think I know this much.
Right.
And I was like, but this is all a relative scale, because so many guys know that much, but because their measuring stick is, centimeters, not inches or whatever, it's like they think they know that much. But you're a guy that I'll just flat out say it, like, you know more about this stuff than anybody I know. And you've proven it today. And you still think you only know that much.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because you see that there's this much more to know.
Yeah.
And that's the key mindset, I think, to fishing, is never thinking you've got it figured out, because you never really do.
You never do. And if you stop learning, then you stop catching fish.
That's it. I mean, that's the biggest secret to the whole thing.
That's the funnest part of these fish. They're constantly changing. There's constantly something to learn new, something new that you can figure out. And that's the enticement to, for me. Learning something new, getting them to eat a different way, a different tactic, a different scenario that you've never seen before, and then you're like, man, that's awesome.
No, and that's in my opinion, for what little it's worth, like that's what I think every time I meet someone, you can tell like the real anglers from the people that are just kind of like the guys that follow like that. I think that's the thing that every person that wants to be an angler should aspire to, is like catching fish is cool. Like we did that today. That's cool.
Right.
But you're not just out to catch fish. You're out to catch fish different ways.
Right.
You're trying to learn different nuances, different tactics, different elements to it. And to me, like that's what fishing is.
Absolutely.
Like anybody can do the same thing over and over again, attrition fishing. But even with stripers, like you're doing this thing like it's a science. It's cool.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the live bait, and that's like a really broad term. Because I mean, live bait could be anything from red worms to like these skipjack herring you guys use.
Right.
And stripers especially, like you've got a whole gamut of stuff. Like you've talked about dead bait, you talked about that you're using from live bait, talking about trout, thread fins, alewives, gizzard shad,
Absolutely.
big trout, skipjack. When you come at this and you have all these different live baits that you could possibly choose from, like in general, I know there's no absolutes. Like, what are some of the reasons, rhymes, that you choose these different baits at different times?
Especially at the dam, the smaller baits work well. Just the weight to get them down, like I said, getting it in their face if you're drifting the boils. As the day wears on here, your fish become less active. They need a bigger bait to get their attention. You throw a 3-inch bait in front of their face and they're sitting there half asleep because they've been eating all morning. They who cares? It'll float on by them. You throw a big 10-inch gizzard like you seen earlier, throw him in there and he's just wide open, just really active. He's got the thump. They feel the vibration. They can't help it, man. They're going to eat it. They're like, I don't care if they've been eating all morning. They're like, oh, I got to have that.
Yeah,
Boom.
I can do my job.
Yeah. So really, like I said, for here, small bait in the boils. If you're pitching baits, I like at least a 6-7 inch bait. You want something that's hardy enough that you can throw out, and when it hits, it doesn't kill it, you know? So
Yeah.
usually if you hit that 6-7 inch and up, you can pitch those baits pretty well, and they'll do good for 2 or 3 casts. After that, get rid of them. And no matter what size bait you're using, use a good one. I mean, if something happens, you hit a rock with it, hit a tree. I mean, if you have to bring it back to the boat and look at it, like, is he okay? No, he's not.
Okay.
Get rid of it. You know,
Yeah.
bait's everything, no matter what the size. You want it really, really active.
Yeah, gotcha. No, that's cool. That's good, because I'm sure, I mean, I caught myself doing it a couple times.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's okay. He's moving.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you know, apparently not. You gotta have good bait. So, I mean, all fish are affected different ways, different levels. But obviously the weather, the water, you know, temperatures, conditions, stuff like that, barometer, affects these fish. Like, how does that dictate what you're going to do on a given day? Given the fact you're reactive, but how do those different things affect these fish?
During the summertime, you know, as long as the weather stays consistent, the bite will stay fairly consistent as well. You know, it's not as bad as like in the fall or in the wintertime. You have a big cold front. You know, cold fronts will hurt them pretty bad. You have the high pressure bluebird days after the cold fronts. You know, it kind of knocks them out. But down here, water temp, you're looking, you know, ideally you want to be 66, 67 degrees and lower. That's ideal for the stripers. You do have to be careful because you may be fishing someplace that's 75 degrees, but right underneath it, it's 58 degrees. You know, just a thin layer of hot water. So don't overlook those areas. You know what you have flowing downstream and the different conditions there. But I really don't change my tactics. I mean, everybody asks when is the best time to go fishing, and my answer is the same today. You know, every day is the best day to go fishing because you never know when that next big bite's going to go off. You know, where you have the 20, 30, 40 fish days, or you catch 5 over 40 pounds in a day, or a couple 50s, and you know, so I'm kind of different on that. You know, a lot of people look the barometric pressure here and there. Oh, it's the best fishing times from here to here. Best fishing times when I'm in front of some fish with a really active bait and get them to eat.
Right,
you know, so it really doesn't dictate what I do, but you know, obviously the different weather does change them. You know, so just go into it, same deal, open mind, do what you normally do. If that doesn't work, figure out where they're sitting, present it to them a little different, and get them to eat. In the summertime, it stays really good all summer. You know, we'll have we had a cold front last week, and that's the first time the fishing has really shut down for a couple of days. You know, we caught fish, we just didn't catch as many as we were. You know, they're still here, it just kind of knocked them in the head for a few days. And typically, if there's a storm coming, go fishing, you know, especially here. If there's a front coming in, moving in, you definitely want to be on the water. You know, they know it's coming. They can feel that pressure getting ready to change, and the fish will go nuts. And, you know, I get a lot of calls, hey, should I come? It's supposed to rain tomorrow. I'm like, heck yeah, you pick the best day, you know, come on. And, you know, I love rain. I love the nasty weather. It just seems to get them really active.
I saw, you know, it's weird. I've heard wives' tales. People say like stripers don't hit in rain or lightning or something. I don't know.
Nah, they go nuts.
That's what I thought. I was like, it never made sense to me.
Yeah.
But no, that's cool, and I like the way you approach that too. Is like you're willing to admit that there are better conditions, better times. But like you said, like that's the thing we can't control. You can't control it. I can't control it. We can't always control like when we can be out here. If you can, that's great.
Right.
But even when you can be out here, you still can't control really what's going on. It might go to script, but I mean, I heard you say earlier like sometimes the post frontal shuts them off, whether the current is. Sometimes they feed just fine.
Right.
You never know. I mean, it's weird. You can't totally constantly gauge all the variables involved with these fish. All you can do is kind of predict and adapt. And what you said there is like one of the better illustrations of that. It's like, what's the best day to go fishing? Well, any day you can get out there. Like,
absolutely.
Don't let it discourage you if it's not ideal, because ultimately, ideal is when you get the fish in the net, and you never know. I mean, come and figure out stuff. I know some of my biggest fish have been on the days when you just want to go home and watch TV.
Yeah.
You don't. But no, that's what I think like separates guys like you from the pack. And to be quite honest, like why the pack I think follows guys like you a lot. Is that way of thinking. Like you're proactive. You're wanting to go out, and no matter what the conditions throw at you, you're learning how to adapt to them, and you're not letting it discourage you. You're still out here. And that's the most important thing. Like being aware of those conditions, that are prime are good. Letting them dictate what you do and what decisions you make, not always in your control and not always the best for your angling, in my opinion.
With the weather or anything, I think the biggest thing you can do is don't be afraid to fail. I learned more from failing at this than I have ever learned going out with a plan that actually worked. I've learned so many things from just accident, just being out on the water.
Well, and that's the thing that I think too many people fall into with fishing in general is they take so much from the success, and the success becomes this whole thing that all they do is what got them success 1 or 2 times.
Yeah.
But when you look at those times when you've not had success, and you don't just say, well, it was a bad day of fishing. Like, I hate that phrase. It was a bad day of fishing. Well, it was a bad day of fishing because I didn't do what I was supposed to do, or you didn't do it. The fish were just doing their thing.
Yeah.
But that way of thinking, like saying that, like, adapting to these things, accommodating it, not blaming the fish,
right.
Blaming yourself, coming into it and saying, fail, I failed. It's not the fish's fault, but I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to change and adapt to it. Like, that's what's important.
Yeah, for every great day of fishing, there's a whole lot of bad days in there that, led you to that great day.
Yeah.
The things that you learned to not do. And, that's what I always say. I've done everything the wrong way. I finally started figuring things out and doing them the right way.
Bump your head enough times.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate you guys coming out today, learning a little bit about the striper fishery we have here in East Tennessee. If you want to get a hold of me, my name's Todd Asher with Shad Nasty Fishing Charters. We fish 365 days a year, so you can call me 865-789-1991, or you can catch me at www.shadnastyfishing.com. We're on Facebook. Pretty easy to find. Shad Nasty's kind of a unique name. Help you out any way I can. If you don't want to book a trip, call me. We'll talk fishing. That's why I do it. I love it. So thanks a lot.